the first thing we want to do is create a point or edit a point. Now, before I do that, I want to check my configuration. So I'm going to go into Configure, and I'll look at Coordinate System. Now, in this case, I don't necessarily need a projection because I'm just setting this up for some local calculations or coordinates in this example. But if I wanted to set up a state plane projection or UTM projection, this is where I would set it up in the coordinate systems, and this is definitely something you want to set up before you start plugging in coordinates. Make sure that your projection, your datum, your geoid model is all set up in there before you start entering data. In this example, this would be as though I was going to use some assumed coordinate system. In that case, I would select none as the projection and none as the geoid. Okay, so now I'm ready to start entering my points. So I want to go into the Edit menu with the pencil here. And in the Edit menu, I want to go ahead and select Points. Next, I'm just going to add a point. I'll call it point number 1. And I'm going to select a code from this pull-down list. Now, you'll notice Topcon, I think in version 8 of TopServe, started adding code libraries. And again, in Magnet Field, we have a default code library, which I just love because it's something already there. It's very similar to what most surveyors would use. And if it's not exactly what you want, you can add to this or take away from it however you want. So, okay, so I'm going to put in a code of CP for control point. And to do that, if I click in my field here, I can enter in a C if I'm on my controller. And right here at the top, you see that some common codes pop right up here for us. So I can go ahead and select CP. Next, I'll go ahead and enter in my coordinates, 5,000. And easting, I'll say it's a 10,000. And I'm hitting my checkbox here. And, oops, correction on that. One more, 0. And I'll just give this an elevation of 100. Check. Okay, let's go ahead and make that a control point. And let's click on this little code button here. And you see that I have the code CP, which was predefined by Topcon, which stands for control point. Okay, below here you'll see that Topcon also set up a predefined attribute. An attribute is more information, more detailed information about that particular item. For example, if this was a control point and Topcon has set up an attribute, a text field, which you can see by the ABC that it's a text field, set. So that means set what? So we would go to our text field, which is right here to the right of it, and type in what we set for that control point. In this case, let's just say it was a nail. Okay. And then if we go to the layer, you can see that it's set up by code, and I'm pretty sure that that CP is already associated with a code, or by code is associated with layer control point. So it's going to put our point on the layer control point. Next, you'll see a little photo tab. If I had a controller that had a camera, such as a GRS-1 or a FC2500, or some of the newer controllers that Topcon has out, I could select add from here and capture it from the controller. Okay. Next we have notes, and this is kind of old school survey here. We could just put in our note for that point. Okay. Now this note is not really associated as an attribute, and as far as I know, that's not going to be exported to any type of shape file. This would be an ASCII export only. And I'll hit my little checkbox here. Okay, I've got everything set up for my point. I got a note, control is checked, and CP for my code. Go ahead and hit the checkbox, and now you can see that because I called it a control point, it's going to have this little blue triangle. And then I'll just, if I hit back, it's going to take me back into that edit menu. If I hit home, and this is a big improvement from TopServe to Magnet, that's going to take me home. Okay, So kind of like the whole idea there. Next, let's go ahead and run through setting points using point in direction. Okay, so you see there's a new icon here for those of you that were familiar with TopServe or are familiar with TopServe, that the icon or programs that were previously under Kogo are now under Calculate, which is an excellent idea. I've taught a number of students that have asked me, what is Kogo? And for those of you who don't know, Kogo is coordinate geometry, and it's kind of an older term that some of us older surveyors are familiar with, but not everybody new to survey is familiar with that. So I think Calculate hits it on the nose. I like that. I'll go into Calculate, and then from within the Calculate menu, we're going to go ahead and select point and direction. Now, in point and direction, we're first going to select from a point, and I've already got one populated in there, but if the point is not populated, I would go ahead and select that point from a list. So I can select the point correction from a map, select my point from a map, or select my point from a list. I actually prefer selecting from the list, because once you start collecting a lot of points, you're out in the field, you go to the map view, you've got a cluster of points. It's a little more difficult to find it at that point. Okay, next we have the azimuth button. And you can see this button highlights when I mouse over it, or if I'm out there in the field with a pointer. This azimuth button, when you see the box like this, it actually indicates that it has different options. So we can go azimuth 2 point or azimuth. Now, why is it display azimuth? Hey, I'm a surveyor, I work in bearings. Well, if you want to work in bearings, you can set that up in your configuration. And that's whether you want to display azimuth or bearing in magnet field. In this case, we want to display I wanted to display an azimuth just to make it easy. So from point 1, I'm going to go ahead and go on an azimuth of 0, which should be basically due north or on my grid. I'm establishing my grid right now. Next, we've got angle offset. Angle offset would be the angle that you want to turn off of this 0 azimuth. For example, if I wanted to go 2 degrees to the right of an azimuth of 0, I would just enter in not a 4, but a 2, and that would put me 2 degrees right of that azimuth. But in this case, I do want to go on an azimuth of 0, so I'm going to leave 0 in as my angle offset. Next, jumped ahead a little too quick there. Let's look at this where this pointer is pointing. And HD stands for horizontal distance, and GND stands for ground. So I've got my configuration set up to display horizontal distances in ground distances. Ground would be the versus grid if you were working in a state plane projection or an UTM projection. Okay, and then you'll notice I've got my units here. My units are set up in US feet, and you have that selection as well in your configuration. If you're seeing something other than the units that you want here, do not proceed. Go back out to your configuration, set it up for the units that you want. Okay, so I've got 500 entered in here. Next is my vertical distance. Vertical distance would be, do you want to go up and down in elevation from your initial point? So earlier I stored point number 1 as having an elevation of 100. If I add 1 foot to my vertical distance, that would give my stored point an elevation of 101. Okay? And I'm going to go ahead and store my Kogo point as point number 2, and I will also give it a code of I'm going to plug in C, and my CP pops up. Okay, so now I just want to go ahead and select Calculate. That is going to give me the calculations, the calculated coordinates, and you'll notice that elevation now is 101 because we went up in elevation. from point 1. It's an azimuth of 0, and we have all the information displayed that we entered. So that looks good, so I'm going to go ahead and store this point. Remember to store the point, very important, and you should hear the little point store beep on your controller if you've got that set up. Now I can go to the little map button here, and I can see my calculation from 1 to 2. Now if I go back home and I go into the map view, I can now see point 1 and my set point 2. Okay, we'll go to the calculate. I'm going to select point and direction. Next, we're going to select our point from the list. In this case, we're going to calculate from point 1. Click the OK. And then we're going to enter in our value for our horizontal distance. In this example, we're going to elevate or increase our elevation from point 1 by 1 foot. Select the Kogo point box, enter in our point number for our calculated point. Click OK. Select your code. I'm going to select the C and then the CP button to quickly add that code. Calculate, and always remember to save. You can view it in the Map tab and back home.